chairman of the state Republican Party. And it's more in that capacity that I'm going to talk to you tonight. What I'd like to do is basically walk down the ballot that you're going to see. You get them in a few weeks. They should reach you in your homes by like October 17th or 18th or somewhere in there. Carolyn Fundingsland is usually pretty good and pretty quick about getting them out in the cycle. And then you've got about 3 weeks to review them and then turn them in to a ballot box located around the county, to a privately run ballot box by a church, or I think Gators Guns is going to have a ballot box. Or you can drop them off right across the street in the administrative building in Fundingsland's office right there. We recommend you do one of those things. Do not put your ballot in the mail. We are not keen. You can do that. I mean, that's legal. But we're not excited about putting our ballots in the mail. We think that that's what they call it, a broken chain of custody, where you're not sure who touches your ballot if it goes into the Postal Service. So while it is allowed, and some people have to do it, we really recommend dropping the ballot off in one of the ballot boxes. So you get them in about 2.5 weeks from now. You've got about that long again to look them over and fill them out and hand them in. And what are you going to see on that ballot when you get it? Well, the first thing at the top of the ballot is the 4 initiatives that have qualified, that the legislature didn't pass into law in the last session in Olympia and go now onto the ballot for you to vote on. Simple majorities pass the initiatives into law. Remember, originally there were more, but the legislature ended up passing 3 of the initiatives into law during the last session. And those 3 were restoring police pursuits of criminal suspects, the Washington Parents' Bill of Rights, and the restatement into law that there will be no tax based on personal income in the state of Washington. So those 3 are law. You don't get to vote on those. The legislature put them into law. There's a great little story that some of you have heard me tell before. When that legislative session started in Olympia, the Olympia Speaker of the House, a woman by the name of Lori Jenkins out of Tacoma, said she wasn't going to hear any of them. She wasn't going to allow a vote for any of the initiatives. And then she saw the polling that showed especially the Restore the Police Pursuits and the Parents' Bill of Rights were astronomically popular. They were like 88% support, bipartisan, everybody was going to vote yes on them. And they realized, her political advisors told her, if you leave them on the ballot in November, there are going to be a bunch of people voting for Republican-backed initiatives, and that's going to set them voting Republican. So she literally said this. She decided to split the baby and put 3 of them into law immediately, and then put the rest on the ballot for November. If you've read the Bible, splitting the baby is actually a losing strategy. So we hope that will actually continue, and she'll continue to lose. Anyway, 3 of them are law. Now 4 of them are on the ballot. Of the 4 that are at the top of your ballot for the November 5th election, Initiative 2117 repeals the Climate Commitment Act, the cap and trade tax. That's the thing more than anything that's been driving up the cost of gas and diesel in this state, and propane. People who camp a lot and hunt a lot keep telling me, don't forget propane. It's driven up the price of propane too. And it is an additional tax on these energy sources. So remember, we're already paying a state sales tax on gas and diesel. This is on top of that, in addition to that, to the tune of something like 50 cents a gallon. It's driven up prices here. So that initiative repeals the cap and trade tax. It's, you know, the initiative was in court a little bit. There were some battles over it. One of the good things that came out of the court battles in the early going there was the court actually said, yes, it's a tax. Inslee and Ferguson and crew had been saying that cap and trade was not a tax. And the court said, no, it's a tax. So it repeals it. Initiative 2109 repeals the capital gains tax, which in most of the world is considered a form of income tax. Here in our state, the state Supreme Court said it's an excise tax, not an income tax. Initiative 2109 repeals it, whether it's an income tax or an excise tax or a smelt swimming down the Cowlitz River. It's repealed. And then the third tax reform is Initiative 2124. That's not a repeal, but it makes opt-out the state payroll tax that funds the so-called long-term care benefit scheme run by the state of Washington, which is not long-term care and isn't much of a benefit. But so it doesn't repeal it. Now you'll hear some of the no vote no people saying it repeals the long-term care program. It doesn't. It just makes people able to opt out of the tax, which initially they were. And this payroll tax currently is 58 cents per $100 of whatever your paycheck is. But under the program, under the way the law was written, the bureaucrats running the program at the healthcare authority, the state healthcare authority, can raise that tax with no action of the legislature. So they can raise it and have said they will raise it from 58 cents per $100 to an amount higher. Some say it'll be around 85 cents, some say it'll be $1. At that rate, it's one of the highest state payroll taxes in the country, and it's just a raw deal. So Initiative 2124 lets people opt out of that state payroll tax. And then the fourth initiative at the top of your ballot in November is the new arrival that went straight to the people. It didn't go through the legislature. And that's the Initiative 2066 that restores natural gas. There was a bill passed in the last hours of the last legislative session that begins the process of banning natural gas in homes or businesses in Washington. And now people on the left and the environmental radicals say, Jim Walsh lies. He says it's a ban. It's not a ban. Okay, it is the beginning of a ban of natural gas. And that they can't dispute. It really is. So the initiative says, no, keep natural gas, keep it as an option for anyone who wants it. And the interesting thing on that one was when we were gathering signatures earlier this year on it to qualify it for the ballot, the thing that most people said when they signed, when they agreed to sign it, was, I like to cook with natural gas. And some restaurants said that they couldn't keep cooking what they cook unless they have natural gas. So the cooking with natural gas thing was real, and it was a motive for people to want to support that, keep natural gas as a choice. Of course, you don't have to have it if you don't want it, but you can have it if you want to pay for it. So those are the four initiatives. That's the top of the ballot. When you hear people, you got a crazy neighbor who's big on Kamala Harris, and whoever this guy is, and they say, well, the top of the ballot is Trump. No, the top of the ballot is not Trump. The top of the ballot are the four state initiatives. And each of those four initiatives got almost 500,000 registered voters to sign their support for it. So that's the top of the ballot, and I like that because that's a very Washington thing. The Democrats are always trying to make everything about Donald Trump, and we've got an answer for that. The top of our ballot has nothing to do with Donald Trump. There are four state-specific initiatives from the people. And so that's at the top. After the initiatives, then you've got Donald Trump. We saw some of this here for a bit. I'm actually not worried about the presidential election nationwide. I think Trump and Vance are going to get elected, Trump reelected. The popular vote could be close, but if you look at the way the Electoral College breaks out, Trump is probably going to get reelected with 290 or 300 electoral votes. And you need, 270 to get elected. So he's got a margin. He models to have a margin well above the threshold you need to get elected president again. Washington will always be tough for Trump. He's been so vilified here by the Seattle Times and our other establishment media. He always struggles in this state. It's not a friendly state to Trump. But if you've been reading the papers or watching online or anything, you've probably seen he's doing very well in swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, even Wisconsin. He's going to pick up a lot of those states. And so I'm actually resting easy. I think Trump will be reelected. After the presidential election, and please vote for Donald Trump. I mean, I've said it on TV and I'll say it again. Vote your conscience, but I think your conscience should tell you that these two Democrats that are running they're dumb and dumber, frankly. I mean, they're just not compelling candidates. And you know, Trump shoots his mouth off and goes on Twitter too much and all that, but you know, his policies are good, and his judges are good. And the West Coast has benefited from his appointments to the Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court that we're part of. So I say vote for Trump. After Trump, it's the other federal races. So right after that, it'll be the U.S. Senate race. The Republican candidate is the medical doctor out of Yakima, Raul Garcia. Garcia is an interesting guy, very smooth. Medical doctor. He's tried to carve out the fentanyl crisis as kind of his signature issue and doing something about it, not continuing it. And as a medical doctor, that makes good sense. I mean, he's dealt with addiction and people, and the effects of addiction on people. His campaign has not got as much traction as we hoped it would. Frankly, his numbers in the primary could have been better. But I think the incumbent there, and that's the U.S. Senator Cantwell, I think there is a weariness. She's been in the Senate for a long time, and I think Garcia may be able to capitalize on some weariness people have with truly an establishment politician as the other choice there. So we're trying to help Garcia, and he's got a great story. He is personally an immigrant to this country. He was born in Cuba, and so he and his mother escaped Castro's communism in Cuba. He did it the right way. He's a naturalized citizen, and as I said, a medical doctor who works out of Yakima. So interesting guy. We've just got to try to help him kind of get his message out to more people. I think part of the reason he struggled in the primary is people just don't know him. They don't know his name. They don't know his story. So our efforts are trying to help him get his name and his story out more. And then, of course, after that, you're going to see a race you're all well familiar with, and that is Joe Kent running against this gal, whatever her name is, who's been in there for a little while.
Gluten-free.
The mechanic.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Kent's numbers look good. I mean, you know they're dumping a ton of money against him. And you're seeing the ads. I mean, if you're on TV, if you're on the internet, especially they got a ton of ads on like the streaming stuff. So if you're on Netflix or Peacock or any of those streaming services to watch TV, they got a ton of ads there against him, and they're not really talking about the incumbent gal too much. They're just trashing Kent. And having been someone who suffered a little bit of that in my political career, I can tell you, I think Joe's attitude is just spell my name right. I mean, which they do, despite all. Joe himself is running a much more disciplined messaging campaign this time. I'm impressed by it. Many people are. The first time round, he allowed himself to get kind of distracted, and he tried to, answer allegations, play on the other guy's side of the court too much. He's staying very much on his message this time, and I think that helps immensely. The other factor is the Trump vote. Trump wasn't on the ballot 2 years ago, the first time Kent ran, and Trump is on the ballot this time. And as I can see from hanging around in here and walking around out there are a lot of Trump supporters in this part of Washington. And those supporters are going to vote this time. Not all of them voted 2 years ago. And I think that's going to be a big difference in Kent's favor. So those are the federal races. After the federal races, you get to the state races. And of course, this is a loaded ballot this year. We've got the initiatives, we've got the president, we've got the Congress and the Senate, and then we get to the state where we've got the governor's race. And, it's been tough. It's been a tough primary season in the governor's race here. But Dave Reichert is the Republican candidate, and he made it through with a large margin, so it wasn't even very close. Now we need to unify behind Reichert because the option is disastrous. The Democrat candidate is the current state attorney general. He is a petty and vindictive man. His negative ratings, even among Democrats, are high. And our challenge in trying to support Reichert and unify behind Reichert, our main challenge as a party is to try to find ways to carve out these subgroups of Democrats who don't like their candidate for governor and are basically open, we hope, to a reason not to vote for this guy, to vote for the other guy, namely the Republican. And so there's some tactical politics in that, but I assure you what we're doing is we're focusing with specific messaging to specific subgroups, subpopulations of Democrat voters, because a lot of them dislike the Democrat candidate for different reasons. Some of them don't like him because the guy's so anti-cop, he hates cops, he prosecutes them and loses. He does all, he's just as anti-cop as you can be. Some of them don't like him for his gender stuff. I mean, he's all caught up in the transgender stuff, and these are Democrats. There are subgroups of Democrats who you should be leading with and talking about, and they don't like that he tries to glom on there. Some of them don't like this stupid stuff he did with the chicken noodle checks, where he was sending checks out to people, supposedly because tuna fish cans were too expensive. And it was pretty clearly a cynical attempt he put his name on the rebate checks, right? It was pretty clearly a political attempt to frankly buy votes, for $50 or $100. And again, Democrats don't like that stuff. So each of the subgroups of Democrats have a different reason they're looking for, and we're going to try to play to those points. It's going to be tough. These statewide races are always tough. You probably have seen ads already on TV blasting Reichert the same way they try to blast Joe Kent. And the other side, the left, is very arrogant and confident about their ability to attack effectively. But I think at some point their attacks have a diminishing return, that the attacks aren't as effective anymore. And when all they do is attack, I think it's hollow. And I don't mind their spending their tens of millions on this stuff, because I think they might as well be setting that money on fire. So that's governor. After governor, and our first speaker tonight, is the fellow running for lieutenant governor. As most of you know, but some don't, in our state, the governor and lieutenant governor are elected totally separately. They do not run as a ticket. So you could have a Democrat governor and a Republican lieutenant governor, or a Republican governor or lieutenant governor Democrat. They're not on the same ticket like president and vice president are. The lieutenant governor has a lot of roles, and Dan Matthews will talk to you about those in a second. The main role is the lieutenant governor is the presides over the operations of the state senate, and on occasion can cast a tie-breaking vote in a state senate vote. The lieutenant governor does other things too, and talk about those for a minute or two here. I'd like to introduce you to Dan Matthews, who is the nominated and endorsed Republican candidate for lieutenant governor on your November 5th ballot. Dan.